Hi guys. Before we proceed to this video, we've got something very important to share with you. Neoliberalism, Inequality and Authoritarianism by Professor Jon V. Kofas is available for purchase. You can order it directly from the publisher Little French eBooks or through Amazon.
Hello everyone, welcome. This is very brief session, a teaser video on how the exorbitant US defense spending, now just under $1 trillion, in a budget roughly of $7 trillion, clearly a budget that reflects spending that is as much as the next 10 countries combined, right after below the United States, the next 10 largest competitors in the defense sector. Now, when we combine that with the very large United States public debt, and then when we look at the economic nationalism that the Trump administration has been pursuing, it had started during the first Trump administration. Then Biden continued somewhat on the same course, especially toward China, somewhat on the same course. But now it has intensified, and the tariffs imposed, although they're now on a pause, imposed on the entire world. There is no doubt that this spells trouble even for some of the most hard-nosed supporters of the Trump administration and the Republican Party, who obviously feel very strongly about economic nationalism as the panacea, that somehow it will save the United States from the very long decline that started in the 1990s, roughly a decade after the Reagan administration institutionalized neoliberal policies of privatization, deregulation, corporate subsidies taken from cuts in welfare programs and social safety net programs, and of course, corporate bailouts, including banks and insurance companies. When we put this mix together, what we have is really a recipe for even more rapid and steeper decline ahead. The question is, of course, to what degree is this administration willing to go to achieve the goal that it has stated, namely realize enormous savings of mythological proportions. And that's all they are. It's mythology, by the way, because no serious institution, for example, the International Monetary Fund, or in the private sector, Goldman Sachs, Bloomberg, they don't take any of these claims of tariffs erasing American public debt, or reducing, or being a substitute rather for tax reductions, and even to the extreme degree of eliminating income taxes. Tariffs have a multidimensional impact, and when combined with, like I said, exorbitant spending on defense, because the United States feels that this is where it has most leverage in the geopolitical domain, using defense, military solutions to diplomatic crisis, in other words, in order to gain geoeconomic advantages on a world scale. This has not worked. It has not worked, especially in the last 25 years, since 9/11. In other words, when the George W. Bush administration decided to declare a war on terror. It had started before that, but he is the one who launched the wars in both Afghanistan and Iraq, both disastrous, by the way. The United States spent several trillion, depending on whose estimate you believe, from 4 to 7 trillion for those wars. So we are talking, this is in addition, by the way, to what it's spending, the budgetary allocations for DoD, for the Department of Defense. Now, let's look very briefly at the claims on tariffs and what um, organizations, like I said, from IMF to Goldman Sachs, have to say about it. The International Monetary Fund came out and disputed the validity of statistics offered by the Trump administration with regard to revenue realized from tariffs that it supposedly will collect to make up for the budgetary deficit, perhaps pay interest on the debt, use some of that to pay interest on the debt, etc. The IMF doesn't buy those figures. On the contrary, the International Monetary Fund has warned that as have other organizations, by the way, and private economists, university economists who have university professors in economics who have warned about all of this. The number one concern is that consumer spending will cut U.S. GDP, as it will also cut world GDP. It is estimated, the IMF is estimating, that world GDP will be slashed by at least 1%, which is roughly 1.1 to 1.2 trillion. So this is an enormous cut in GDP. This is a very important figure in world GDP cut. This is not this doesn't even take into account, by the way, the trillions already lost in stock market values on a world scale, not just on the NASDAQ and S&P and the Dow, but on a world scale. Stock markets have tanked since the Trump administration made these announcements. So on top of that, there will be economic contraction manufactured as a result of economic nationalism that the Trump administration is pursuing. Now, the Trump administration did announce a pause. It announced reductions. It announced that there were countries falling all over, governments falling over all over themselves, not countries, governments falling all over themselves to come to Trump, to the Trump administration and beg for deals. And it is true that there are countries that are interested in ending this madness of economic nationalism, of tariff wars that the United States has declared on the world. That's true. There are countries. However, it is not true that China has come begging. In fact, China has denied that it is currently negotiating, that it has started negotiating tariff reductions, as the Trump administration had insisted. Reporters will do their job. The Trump administration said, we're already negotiating with them to calm the markets, by the way, and put a pause on some of the damage that this has caused to the value of the dollar, which is losing, by the way, because treasury bonds are not going to be that attractive for buyers, either domestically or globally. So especially globally, given the instability that tariffs cause. So China simply said, we haven't started any negotiations. They're setting up the background, the foundation for negotiations, because they know that the Trump administration will come to the table. But this is an indication, the fact that the Trump administration was not forthcoming on this issue, at least according to the Chinese, unless they're lying, and we can't be sure about any of them. But the reality is that the markets are an indicator of who is telling the truth, by the way, because investors, unlike policymakers especially in the Trump administration with this tariff policy, are not gambling. They're putting money. They're speculating. Yes, they're speculating to make money um, at the lowest possible risk. Now there is the tariff wars have caused a crisis in confidence, because there are multidimensional effects of tariffs. It's not just drop in consumer spending, drop in GDP. There is also the confidence of investors in the American economy and the American stock market. Money has been flowing out, and one of the reasons that Wall Street has performed so poorly is precisely because of that. There is a crisis of confidence. There is an issue here of the degree to which governments all over the world, friend and foe alike. Just today, by the way, the Trump administration announced that Canada, which has elections coming up, would be better off to be the 51st state. The officials in Canada have asked the United States government officials not to keep repeating that. Canada is a sovereign country. It's not an extension of the United States. And yet they are agitating Canada, the friendliest country to the United States next to England. So in any event, the fact is that economic nationalism has already cost jobs. A number of companies are planning layoffs. The largest retail companies, Walmart and Target in the United States, have blatantly told the Trump administration that there will be empty shelves. It's as simple as that, because everyone knows, who has been to the United States and lived in the United States, that when you look at large retailers, what's on the shelf is a lot of it, most of it, is made in China. It's that simple. And economic nationalism through tariffs, a tariff war at 145%, by the way, will mean, as Walmart executives and Target executives and other retailers have explained to the Trump administration, it will mean empty shelves. So the question is, what does this have to do with society? It means workers will be laid off. There are estimates. Goldman Sachs and others have estimated that for every 100 jobs at the best possible scenario that the Trump administration can concoct, let's say there are 100 jobs that are created in the manufacturing sector because some companies are going to come back to the United States. Let's take that scenario. 500 will be lost in the rest of the economy. So this is not a sound economic policy if you add 100 and you lose 500. So no matter how you slice this, it will be a scenario of economic contraction. And when you add the exorbitant spending of in the DoD, in the defense sector, it means higher debt, which means lower value of the dollar, which means problems selling treasury bonds. So we're looking at a very serious issue here with the currency valuation down the road. And all of this has been explained to the Trump people. Clearly, some of them are so dogmatic, so driven by greed, and driven by the desire to strengthen the national capitalism at the expense of the global international capitalist system, that they cannot see through all of this. Perhaps some of them did not have a proper education. I'm not sure what it is. Some of them perhaps are so blinded by the prospect that tariffs are going to make America great again, that they have actually bought into all of this. I invite you to take a look at the longer analytical video on this issue. It is a very complex issue. Tariffs combined with exorbitant defense spending do spell a disaster, by the way. And one of the areas you look at is the out of control American public debt. I thank you for watching. I ask you to please write comments, ask questions, and join this channel for more topics. Thank you.